And recording has started, making sure we're all go. Okay, so welcome, Steve and Wei. What I will do is I've actually just sent through the link to the Google site, so that should have come up in the comments box or conversation box. Can you see it?
One new message, read. Yep.
Okay, so can I get you to put that into your search engine, please?
Hoo-wah. Principles for good assessment.
Oh, I know, full on. So the idea with this one today is that we'll sort of be looking at how's a qualification assessed and looking at things like, discussing the purpose of assessment and who's involved, to identify, some of the terminology that's specific to assessment, and this will fall out of the principles for good assessment, and describe the alignment of assessment to learning and to learning activities. So we'll see how we go with maybe a few more people might pop in and make a bit more of a conversation. But if we sort of think about, what's the purpose of assessment? We do assessment at the end of our courses. What's actually the purpose? Way's typing, so she might not be.
It gives an idea of ability.
Yeah, definitely.
A measure of ability.
Measure of ability. Okay, fantastic. I will welcome Wei, no problem. If you've got anything that you want to participate, you'll be able to see that. Steve Way's just said that she can't, an issue with her mic, so she can't talk. But Wei, if there's anything that you want to put in there, then please, just type your answers and we'll drag these into the conversation. So Steve is saying it's a measure of ability. Great. What else? What else is assessment for? What else are we doing with it? What is the purpose?
Gives us an idea of where to steer learning, or where to work on what we've got to improve on, or what needs changing, or what more needs to be learned.
What more needs to be learned? So you can sort of think about it as a bit of a gap analysis then.
Gap analysis.
And so where we've still got to go. And Wei says, assess whether the learning outcomes have been achieved. Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh,
definitely.
Nice work, Wei.
That is nice work. Definitely. So you've also said, and I actually like what you've said too, Steve, it's a bit of a gap analysis. It's a feedback for teachers and that opportunity to feed forward for our learners. You said it's a measure of ability, so it's kind of a point that you can actually diagnose the learning in a way. Thanks, Wei. And that, it shows that where we've still got skills to develop, so again, that gap analysis, and also shows that it's just certification of your learning in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else that the purpose of assessment? Anything? I mean, you'd sort of covered what's for the student, what's for the teacher. Is there anybody else that's out there that the purpose of assessment is meaningful for, or to?
Well, it's very important for employers and for your industry providers as well. It gives you a measure of quantification. You can say, this person has achieved this,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we have measured this person on their abilities, and we are now saying that they have the capabilities, competencies to work in your environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and Way's saying, yeah, like a test drive. Absolutely, definitely. Is it important for the institution?
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah. In what way? Why is having people pass assessments, success of qualifications, the number of students that we have come into our courses complete their qualification, Why is that important to the institution?
Well, I guess we'll be Putin if very few people are getting qualifications and passing their assessments, and they're not being taught thoroughly,
Yeah.
and they're not passing the assessments. It's a sign that we're failing as an institution and as educators.
Yep, absolutely, definitely. And what's the impact of that, not meeting those standards?
We're doing a bad job. We're going to get fewer students who are going to want to come here, and we're going to get fewer of our students employed at the end of it, I'd imagine.
Yep, definitely. What about funding?
Oh, absolutely. Gone.
And so we've written a way to ensure the educational goals achieved by both learners and, yeah, absolutely. And if we don't have learners that are succeeding, if we don't have learners that are enrolling in courses, and it sort of directly affects our funding, so we could actually lose these qualifications. We won't be a provider, so that affects the community. And also, does affect the institution's academic rigour and their standings. So, we sort of know, and looking at, what's going on the West Coast at the moment, is that, you would probably second guess actually enrolling, because you're thinking, okay, so the learners aren't being given the knowledge, they're not being assessed competently, so then, what's that actually saying about the institution out into the wider world? So marketing-wise, it's a huge impact there.
Oh, it's a lose-lose-lose. Nobody's winning out of that.
No. So it's actually, it's quite fascinating when you sort of scratch below the surface and think about that wider impact if our assessments aren't rigorous.
And related to what the qualification is. And also, of course, you've got your different kinds of assessment. You've got your formative assessments as well as your summative assessments. So
yeah.
You've got two different, they're all doing the same thing, really, but your formative assessments are a lot more along the way to steer your teaching, and then you're really aiming towards teaching stuff thoroughly so that they get a good summative assessment.
Absolutely. Definitely. I mean, if we aren't doing formative assessment, how are we gauging where our learners are sitting, what their knowledge is, how our teaching is meeting their needs? There's a whole gap in our knowledge of ourselves and our learners. So definitely. How often do you use formative assessment, Steve?
Not often enough, realistically. I mean, I do use it quite a lot, and a lot more since I did your 3-day course. Mm-hmm. They really opened my eyes to it. And I mean, I had been doing it, but I hadn't known what I was doing.
Yeah. And
I hadn't realised the importance of it as much. And now I really try and include it if not every lesson, at least every couple of lessons.
And it can be something that is just really simple, can't it? It doesn't need to be a massive big quiz.
No.
Are you using your formative assessment activities? We'll just give you a moment to type. Yep, fantastic. And finding, so, when you get feedback from that formative, so you're looking at it and thinking about, right, okay, what actions from this point? And while Way's typing, Steve, you can expand on that as well. What do you do with that information?
I use it to work out areas I need to focus on, both generally and singularly. I'll go, well, look, the whole class is, or almost the whole class is having trouble with this. I might gear a lesson towards this and work out another way of getting this point across. They've all slipped up on automatic transmissions. So I went and got an automatic transmission last night from the garage I work at sometimes.
Yeah.
And today, after lunch, because the kids were so good, we pulled that transmission to pieces. We cut open a torque converter because they didn't understand how a torque converter worked. And I've always wanted to do that myself, but I've never had time in the workshop environment to do it.
Right.
And I got the kids involved, and they were just loved it. And we pulled this thing to bits, and I was like, look, I've never seen inside one of these things. I've seen diagrams, But this is great. And I had the other group pulling transmission to bits, and it was just fantastic. And we'll redo that particular piece of the unit, and I bet you they're all going to fly through it because they just got so engaged with it.
They would have. It's completely applicable. They're learning as they're going. They're problem solving.
Yep, working in small groups.
Yeah, and I reckon as well, for the fact that you had never seen inside one before, you hadn't done it, they're learning with
I
you.
told them that. Yeah, exactly. And they were like, what? I'm like, no, I've never done this. Always wanted to cut inside a torque converter. But it takes, 45 minutes in a workshop situation. Somebody's got to be paying for every minute of that hour, and nobody wants their torque converter cut open. So, yeah, it was great.
Oh,
I did half
fantastic.
it during lunch hour too, so, it was already almost done by the time they came back from lunch. But
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So you had to sneak into there first.
Well, I just did a lot of the grunt work of cutting it because I was real worried about one of them cutting their finger because it's. But they were really good, real safety conscious, and yeah, I was really pleased with them. I really was.
Oh, fantastic. Go you.
Yeah,
How are you going their way?
They were different.
Oh, you're still doing a lot of typing their way. Thank you very much. Here we go. Results of formative assessments have been very helpful for both the learners and myself. I second Steve's idea about gap identification as a role of assessment. I've received many positive feedback from students on formative assessment, less stress, but very helpful for learning. Yeah, and that's exactly it, Way. It's just really guiding the learning, isn't it? So when we sort of think about assessment, we've identified what the purpose is, probably from looking at all the things that you said, feedback for teachers, feed forward for learners, diagnosis of learning. We start to think about, who are our stakeholders that are involved in assessment. So, teachers, students, industry.
Parents,
absolutely. Anybody else? That's stakeholders.
potential employers.
Yep. Industry, employers.
The whole rest of our Polytech, and all the other Polytechs as well.
Yeah, definitely every other tertiary institution. There may be that point that, who knows what the future holds, but, what's the possibility of a student starting at OP and then completing through Telford or somewhere else, and so you'd actually want to make sure that if our learners are on this trajectory, and then we're going to work really closely, and Telford's going to offer the last, part of a degree that we don't offer here, then, we want to make sure that our students are getting, the same quality learning that they've received through us as they carry on. Yep. And also the government has got a vested interest because they're handing out the money in the end. NZQA and the relevant authorities, fantastic way, absolutely. TEC, the Tertiary Education Commission, all over us. So,
Mum.
Your mum. So when we think about the picture that I've got up here and the principles of good assessment, now this has come from Griffith University, and the principles for good assessment actually probably haven't changed for a very long time. But when we look at, it fair, appropriate, valid, reliable, transparent, authentic, manageable, and engaging, what do these actually mean? If we think, right, well, I've got to provide all of this when I'm providing an assessment, what do these words actually mean? Have you both come across any of these words before?
I think valid and authentic are probably pretty similar, the same thing. I'm doing a thing about automotive engineering, so the assessment I give them has got to be about the piece of automotive engineering we've been studying it for the last couple of weeks, and I can't go, right, well, we're going to run around the block, and whoever gets back here first, they've passed, It's got to relate.
Yeah, it absolutely has to relate. So definitely, it's got to be valid. What else would you come up with? What else would be, the terminology? What are the other words that would make sense?
Relating to valid and authentic?
Well, relating to any of those 8 points that are sitting on the principles, on the wheel of principles of good assessment, what would be some other definitions for some of those words? So we said valid is that it's fit for purpose. It's assessing what it means to assess and not something else. So, it's kind of going back to what Wei said right in the very beginning. It's assessing the learning outcomes.
It's got to be fair and reliable. I mean, you've got to be able to, the students have got to be able to come back to you. It's got to be a two-way thing. They've got to be able to go, well, I don't agree with how you've marked me here, and I look at so-and-so's, what they've got said to them, and I think you're picking on me, and you've got to be able to say, well, this is how this is the parameters, this is the rubric I've used to mark this, and you've missed a crucial part here. Can you see here that you've missed out that the needs to be the correct grade of oil used here? You haven't mentioned that at all, and that's probably a crucial component, and this is mentioned here, but your friend here has mentioned that, and that's why there's a difference in score. You know, you've got to be able to back yourself, and you've got to, it's got to be a fair judgment. You've got to have a rubric. You've got to have justifiable way of quantifying things. I'm stuck on quantifying, haven't I? I have to stop saying that.
If it's relative. So
if it's quantifiable.
So in the fact it's fair that assessment methods will not disadvantage individuals. So, you know, so you are right, and it's sort of thinking, if somebody's got to do a presentation of speech, and they are incredibly shy and terrified of speaking in front of a crowd, is there another way that they can do that? You know, because that's going to completely disadvantage them. If goodness, what could it be? You know, it's running around a block, and you know somebody has a disability, then you know that's not fair. Any other of the words up there that we can think of? It's transparent. It's reliable.
Well, I think transparent and reliable, they're all fairly obvious. That's like they're saying, you have to be able to explain and make it, even show beforehand, this is what we're looking for, and this is what you have to deliver if you want to get a good assessment.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's being able to give our learners, you know, information of their assessments. Because what's the first thing the learner does? They walk in, don't they, at the beginning of a course and go, what are the assessments? That's the first thing that they actually want to know.
Yep.
And so, you know, as while we get frustrated as teachers because we sort of, you know, we want to teach all this stuff and give them all this knowledge, you know, it is the assessment that does drive it. You know, the learners just want to meet some learners just want to meet the requirements of the assessment. So, yes, so with it being transparent, it's saying that, you know, this is the information on day one of the course. You know, these are the assessments. These are when they're due, and these are the learning outcomes that they'll be assessing, and these are exactly what the assessments look like, and they won't change.
I'm careful about not giving them the assessment prior, like not giving them a look at an assessment prior to, because I'll give them assignments and assessments, and if you let them look at the assessment, they just go straight to the assessment, and they just want to fill that out. And you go, look, the assignment has got all the answers for the assessment. If you read and we work through the assignment, you'll find the assessment so easy. What's the answer number 5? What's the answer number 6? It's all in the assessment. Whereabouts? Well, have a look at the thing and we'll work it out, you know. So you've got to be careful and not give them the assessment or an assessment prior to them having done some learning.
Absolutely. And so, you know, with yours, when they're short answer assessments, yes, 100% agree. You know, there's no way that I would, you know, because like with our assessments, it's, you know, you have to do a teaching observation or a reflection, so it's no problem having that information right at the very start. But if it was a maths test, for example, or, you know, with your stuff that's, you know, right or wrong answers, completely agree. You know, you can give them an outline that it will be an open book assessment that will be given to you on such and such a day. So they know that information. But yeah, no, you couldn't, because they'd be rushing ahead, and where's the learning within that? So they're missing out a whole part of our constructive alignment.
Exactly, and you give them the the first book, I remember the name of it before, the first set of books, and they're looking through that, and all they want to do is find the kid in the class that's already done his and copy his.
Yeah.
Like, really, that's not going to get you through the assessment.
No.
But,
no.
They're like desperate to get the right answers in there, if they don't understand the answers. Funny enough.
The learning doesn't matter.
Yep.
Way, I like what you've written about engagement, and that's so true, that you've had an experience with both assessment, students like and students like less, and yeah, definitely. They will do better and get better results if they're more excited about them. Definitely. Well done, you guys. Any others that you're sort of thinking in that are, what's manageable? What does that mean?
Well, you don't want to overload your students, you don't want to overload your learners, and you don't want to be assessing the heck out of them. That nobody likes being tested continually. You can make certainly your formative assessments, you can make them fun and all the rest of it, but if you're loading them up with exams, as they said, nobody's going to enjoy that. And it's so much marking for you as well.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. And so, if you are one course out of a whole program, it's talking with your mates when you're back in that designing stage. If each course, and there might be 8 of them, if they're all running consecutively through the year, how are you going to pinpoint those so that they're not, at every 3 or 4 weeks handing in 3 or 4 assessments? So it's that planning.
Yeah, with 50 questions per page, and write a 1,200-word essay that no one's ever going to read.
Absolutely. And ways put in, you don't want to over-assess the learners. No, I completely agree. No. I mean, there's absolutely no point when you can gain through, your teaching every day that they are learning. There's no point in over-assessing them. So I've got a wee game for you guys. If you just scroll down to the formative assessment activity, which is underneath your triangle, and you'll see there is a Quizlet link. It says Access Quizlet here. So if you click on that here, that should be letting you in to a wee matching game. And hopefully you are in on that. Start the game. And what you were doing is you were aligning the terms to the definitions. So I can't see what you're doing because it's not a collaborative. So you can have a play with that and see how you go. How's it all going out there?
Diabolically. Just randomly pushing them works pretty well.
You could go back in at later times and trial. Oh, you can't see the link way. I will send you. Okay, that should be coming up in the box now, Way. So see if you can copy and paste that into your search engine.
Well, I got second and I was playing on my own.
I was putting people in for trials before. So is that an activity that you could use in the class, do you think, Steve? Because they can use it on their phones.
I do use Quizlet.
Yeah?
Not this, I've used that particular one. But yeah, I do use Quizlet. It's pretty good.
Cool. Do you use it as the flip cards?
There's matching one, there's flip cards, there's quite a few of them I've played with. It's more finding ones that are appropriate because I'm not real good at making them. So I tend
Right.
to find ones that are in there that seem appropriate. But I don't know about Quizlet, but Kahoot, you've got to go through and you've got to do the whole thing yourself beforehand, because there's a couple of highly inappropriate ones in Kahoot.
Oh, are there? That's
Oh
good.
yeah,
That's
there's
good to know
one,
and good to be aware of.
and it comes up, and you think, I don't know, you're sleeping with my wife, and
Really?
then the next bit, yeah, obviously some guy set up some other guy um,
Oh,
in his
right.
school or his university or something, and he's just sent him a wee message, which you'll be doing in front of 3,500 students.
Oh dear.
But yeah, you just pays to just have a wee look through them.
Just to be aware.
Yeah, yeah.
That is a worry. Um, that's actually really good to know. So, with how are you going up their way? Great. Oh, fantastic. You got second place. Awesome. Good on you. Um,
Well, you got second place as well. How does that work?
yeah, you guys are incredible.
We drew. We're both equally excellent.
Yep, definitely. So,
Positive way.
yeah, it's good. You can test it on everybody else. um, so we did talk about constructive alignment when we were in our workshops, and sort of saying it's the alignment of learning outcomes to teaching and learning activities and to assessment tasks. So I've given a definition that's come out from John Biggs, who's really behind the theory of constructive alignment. And so, constructive refers to the idea that students construct meaning through relevant learning activities. So it's kind of, that theory of constructivism or co-constructivism. So kind of thinking that, that meaning is created by the learner, that the learner is central to the learning. So whether they construct it on their own or whether they socially construct or co-construct, in groups. And also alignment is referring to the learning environment where teaching and learning activities and assessment tasks are aligned to intended learning outcomes. So, we know that this is important, and when we're looking at instructional design or designing programs and designing courses, we know that assessment can be is the primary driver of learning and the learning approaches, and that there needs to be that match between the assessment tasks and the learning. But often, we get very, very creative with our learning activities, and for some reason, our assessment tasks tend to be a little staid, or just we can't kind of get past, it needs to be a theory assessment, it needs to be a practical assessment. I want my students to do an oral presentation, but there doesn't seem to be much room into what that oral presentation looks like. So having an assessment that is poorly considered or poorly constructed can actually sort of lead to learning in the opposite direction, away from our learning outcomes, or it may actually undermine our learning outcomes. So keeping in mind that we are aligning activities and assessments to our learning outcomes, if we look at the two learning outcomes that we've got here underneath our triangle, use a range of methods to gather learner feedback and contribute to the debate on the links between research and teaching. So what I would ask you to do is just to come up with some ideas. Let's look at that first learning outcome, use a range of methods to gather learner feedback. What are some of the teaching activities that we could do to teach that? And then what would be some of the assessments that we could gather that feedback? How could we assess that learning outcome? So when we were in the workshops, we were talking about, the importance of the verb. So, kind of thinking we've got the verb here, use. So we want them to be doing something. So it's not a knowledge, it's a skill. So what activities would we create that would help our learners use a range of methods to gather learner feedback, and what would be an assessment? What do you think, guys?
Well, it sort of depends on what you're learning, what you're teaching. You know, what learning outcome you're looking for to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's a cooking class, you could very simply get them to cook a meal, a portion of a meal, or they could write a plan up for it. And same, you know, for a lot of things, I guess you could get your students to give you like your lesson plan, but give me a job card, a plan for this particular activity. Write it out for me. Give me every 5 minutes what you'd be doing, what needs to be done, what tools you need, what ingredients you need, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So what if it was this learning outcome here? Use a range of methods to gather learner feedback.
I guess you could get a Skype meeting going, and you could get everybody to tell you some methods of that would get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm a bit confused actually. Use a range of methods.
Yeah, so if you wanted your, if you were teaching a teacher to gather feedback from their learners, and you were how would you encourage them to learn about the different methods of gaining learner feedback?
I'd recommend electric shock collars if I was dealing with teachers.
That's not needed at all. Way saying a survey might be a usual way. So way is a survey, that could be twofold, couldn't it? And I'm just sort of thinking, do you mean that as a teaching strategy or an assessment strategy, or could it be both? So I actually also agree, Steve, that you could use Skype, definitely.
Well, we are right now. That's what you're doing right at the moment.
Yeah.
That's what we are doing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So yeah, conversation, face to face. We could write a brief synopsis and post it to you in the mail.
Yep.
Yeah, we could be gathering data and sending it to you by an email. But that's what you're saying for the survey.
Yeah,
that was a good idea, Way.
So if you, so if I was sort of thinking, right, I need to teach these guys about the importance of feedback and what different methods there are. So it would actually probably be trialing a whole bunch of different methods and using them within the classroom environment. So way I'd say it could be both. I do use peer assessment for the process monitor. Yeah, and OP has a student course evaluation. Excellent, definitely. And then, so if I was going to assess you guys on the different methods that you're using to gather feedback, so we're saying, okay, we could survey. What other ways would there be the assessment? What other assessment activities could we use in gathering this information of seeing you use feedback?
Well, you give us a list of potential ideas and have us pick our favourite 6 out of those or something like that, or the appropriate ones for particular conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. So that could be a really good way of doing it. So we're actually thinking, right, if I'm in a workshop like your environment, I'm not going to ask them with their greasy hands to pull out their iPads and start doing an alignment thing that we did on Quizlet. It's not going to be practical, is it? So actually just, scribbling down a note or putting their thumbs up in the air, or actually just, that would be the better one, collating a whole pile of little post-it notes. And it wouldn't matter if there was a bit of grease on them, and then you're grabbing that and basically, summarising all the information that has come through on that.
Oh, yep. I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
So Way, maybe a set of questions on methods, what methods have been used and how they've been used. Fantastic, definitely. So it's, that the methods of gathering the student feedback, it's finding a variety of ways. The assessment would be finding a variety of ways that you're actually gaining that feedback. Is it written? Is it a survey? Is it post-it notes? And then what are you doing with it? So look at that's quite a horrible learning outcome. The next one's not too nice either. Contribute to the debate on the links between research and teaching. How would you teach that? What sort of strategies would you use to contribute to the debate on links between research and teaching? Breaking that down. What sort of activities could you do?
Well, I mean, realistically, that's your formative assessment, and your assessments are research as to how effective your teaching has been and how well it's been taken up, and what you need to do more of.
Yep.
So you're really researching teaching and
yep.
the take-up of your particular subject.
Absolutely. So you could be, if you do a lot of group work teaching, for example, then you might research constructivism or co-constructivism. If you do a lot of maybe watch what I do, you do it, and then you pass. It's sort of mastery. So they might be then researching on what theories underpin their teaching. So yeah, definitely one way of doing it. How else could you do it? How else could you, because that's one part you're breaking down. How else could you teach? Getting them to contribute to the debate. It's a tough one. It's a horrible one. Will they all know what a debate is?
Oh yeah, they're all good at that.
A formal debate.
No, not so good.
So it's kind of thinking about, how we, when we look at this learning outcome, how we're going to break it down so that chunks of it. So it might be lessons, on what is debate, researching debate, having debates. And then how would you assess that? What would you use as your assessment activity to assess that learning outcome?
You'd probably have to get a pro and a con as to a particular idea, and get them to decide to research either the pro or the con for a particular idea,
mm-hmm.
and give you what they had managed to find out. Or you could have a debate. You could organise a debate between the pros and the cons. That's a classic debate, I suppose.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yes, you do need two teams, so you're right, pros and cons, or you could have, you don't need research to teach, or you do need research to teach, and have a debate. If they're all over the place, have an online debate. Where you say in-class debate, the straightforward one, students do not necessarily like it, but it leads them to review further literature and understand the research trend. Absolutely. So that's your teaching activities. That's fantastic. And then, activity last time, the rotate flip charts. Students love it. Absolutely. So if we had, especially near the end, so you can use those as your, what's that word when you're doing, isn't that terrible? I've gone completely blank. You're cramming. You're cramming for an exam when you get all your students in at the end and you do. Terrible. Help me out here. You're not teaching them. You're just going over stuff in preparation. Reviewing. We'll use that. That's a good word. So Stephen Wade, do you have a learning outcome that you could share? And so that we can sort of think about, how we would teach that and how we would assess that.
Well, I had a great lesson today, and it went fantastic with the kids. And at the end of it, one of the wee guys turned to me and said, "Can we set something on fire?" And I thought, the day hasn't been wasted.
So
that was his learning outcome from the day. He thought it would be appropriate to ask me if we could set something on fire. That threw me right back. Right back.
I'm just thinking, how would that activity relate to the learning outcome?
Exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
What have I done?
He'd pulled something apart, now he wanted to burn it.
Yeah. He obviously thought, yeah, I can relate to this guy, Steve. He's along my wavelength. He likes wrecking stuff. I bet he likes burning stuff too.
I bet he would. Way,
Oh.
have you got one that you could share, a learning outcome? I actually, being remiss, I should have got everybody to bring a learning outcome with them that we could pull apart. She's typing.
Good on her. I got nothing.
No papers in front of you, Steve, that you can pull on that has a learning outcome or a unit standard in it?
Oh, okay. Well, the achievement of a unit standard, that's a learning outcome, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess we've got all those. We've got our assessments, the learning outcomes, and our formative assessments are learning outcomes too.
Great. But no grades attached.
No.
Good.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
And it should be as well. So have you got one there that you can share?
As in any assessments?
Or a learning
No.
outcome that we can sort of pull apart and think about ways that we could teach it and assess it.
Yeah, I'm a bit unsure as to what you're actually asking me, Trish.
So if you've got a unit standard there, does it have something that will sort of say understand how not an electric engine, understand how an engine works, or?
I see what you're saying. I don't know, I would never read them, I just fail them anyway. That's what
I know you're joking.
Yeah, I am. Okay. Performance criteria?
Yes. Yes,
Like that.
PCs they're called now, aren't they? Sorry.
PCs. There we go. Stand by to be board rigid. They're written in a very special language that makes your eyes shut.
They normally do.
Select appropriate tools and workshop equipment for the job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got a range of tools there, you can imagine. And the selection of tools and equipment is made that enables the task to be completed without undue time being lost, componentary damage, or injury to people.
Okay, so if we just stick to the first part, I was trying to type it up here, but my computer's gone funny. So select appropriate tools for the workshop. Let's use that.
Yep. Okay.
So how would we, and thank you, Wei, we'll come back to yours, how would we teach select appropriate tools for the workshop?
Oh, that's it. Yeah, I'd give them a range of tools, and I'd say, right, well, this is I'd have to divide them into groups, and say, this is the project you've got, and I want you to go and select the tools, and then I need you to explain to me why you've selected the tools you have and how you plan to use them.
Great. Because they could walk in there and have absolutely no knowledge, so that could be like a diagnostic assessment in a way. So, a whole bunch of tools. What are they used for?
Yeah. And they're forever. That's a really good question, actually. They're forever selecting the wrong tools. And I'll go, well, why did you pick this tool for this job? It was the first one that came to hands, and we've seen you hammering screwdrivers into things before.
Right. Yeah. So it could be a formative assessment. You could have a whole bunch of tools and a whole bunch of names and see if they can put them together.
There's a good Kahoot that does exactly that. There's a whole bunch of workshop tools, and it's name them. That's a real good. I use that one quite often in the morning. Just that sort of thing. I used it this morning actually. That exact assignment.
Just a good refresher.
Just get them going. Get them talking and thinking.
Yeah, and so use it on Kahoot, or else you could just set it up around the room and they could be running around. Way's saying that toolkits and the justification for using particular ones, absolutely, and that's actually that's sort of stepping up and taking it, to that higher level. But absolutely, as you start working down, first identify what they are, and then justify why you're using that one. I like that. That's nice.
Cool.
Definitely. And then how would you assess that?
oh, you'd say, okay, well, now what we're going to do is complete this project using the tools you've selected.
Okay, so it would be...
And if you have to get any extra tools, then that's obviously we didn't select the tools thoroughly enough. You know, and it'll give us an idea. You'll see very, very quickly whether you've selected the right tools.
Cool. So would you see it as a practical or a theory assessment and type of way?
Practical.
Practical, yeah. Do you see a way, if it's problem solving oriented one, did they solve the problem? Fantastic, absolutely. So you could sort of embed it into a project, really, couldn't you? You know, they could be fixing an engine, and so within that, they're actually selecting the right tools. They could be doing anything rather than actually, you know, because some people might actually just have multi-choice questions. You're going to tighten a bolt and have a list of 4 tools, and so they could select the right one, because I mean that's the learning outcome select. So it's not actually sort of saying, you know, that it actually has to be practical. It could be a written thing or a multi-choice thing. But
for sure. I just find the written stuff is works so better if you can back it up with the practical stuff.
Incredibly true, and it brings us back to that point also that Wei was talking about, you know, of engagement. I mean, it's not going to be overly engaging an assessment that, you know, where they're just, you know, drawing a line from a spanner to the word spanner. You know, if they're actually creating and pulling an engine apart, you know, and using and justifying the tools that they've decided they've selected, then they've met that learning outcome as well.
And then you can drag that back into the classroom for your next lesson and say, look, this is what we did, and why did we do that? And yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's sort of, you know, a lot more exciting way. If it's a research-based one, any valid arguments and conclusions have been achieved. That's exactly true. So it's that extension. Is that what you're meaning? That we're actually extending? So they've done it, they've problem solved, they've justified why they've used, and then finishing that off with an argument for using a conclusion. Is that what you're meaning? Or if it's actually more of a research assessment? Yes, okay. Nice. So that's actually taking it to a higher level again, and why not? Wei, your learning outcome, did you write one back up here? It's disappeared. They write what they've learned today as their own. Oh, you don't. Did you have a learning outcome or a PC that you can share with us, Wei, as we think about how we can break that down? Be searching through. So it's actually keeping in mind that whole time that, you know, what is our learning outcome, how are we going to teach it, and how are we going to assess it, and it just keeps drawing us back so that we're actually you know, keeping a focus on what we're doing, that we're meeting the needs of our learners and meeting the needs of the course. We'll just see what Wei's come up with. Make a financial decision in a managerial environment. Cool, blimey. All right, let's put our thinking caps on. Make a financial decision in a managerial environment. How are we going to teach that? Well, you can probably tell us what she does. How are we going to teach it, Steve?
Make a managerial decision.
Make a financial decision. In a managerial environment. Okay, so we know they have to do it. It's a skill-based. Make a financial decision. So you've got to break down thinking about, you know, what is a financial decision? How do we know how are they going to know? How are we going to teach that? What is a financial decision? You'd give them a whole bunch of decisions, a whole bunch of scenarios.
Give them a budget of a certain amount of fictional money to get a project completed, and then give them a list of a whole bunch of stuff that can be purchased, which is greater than the amount of money, and they've got to then work out where to put the money in order to get the maximum bang for your buck, as much outcome as possible for the outlay you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a project. You've got a certain amount of money to meet the project outcomes. Make it work. So it'd be practicing. Exactly, Steve. We start with investment, financing, and dividend policy. And then what's your assessment way? Is it a project? Because I can. Yes, it is a project. Yeah. Nice work, guys. That's good. Gets us really sort of thinking about it and breaking it down, doesn't it?
Mm. Yeah, it does.
And to see what Wei is typing there. You've done so well, Wei, typing all this information, not having the opportunity to speak. I've learned his team up and investment on simulated financial markets. Yeah, I could imagine. That would be fantastic. And is it one project? Because again, that would be a huge amount of, no, you're fine. That would be quite a huge amount of work. So that project could be the whole, just one assessment. And they'd be working towards that over a period of time. Very applicable learning and very applied. Steve, anything you want to add to our conversation on what are the principles of assessment, and then thinking about our learning outcomes, assessment tasks and teaching activities?
No, I think it's just a good point you've made about keeping us on track with stuff. It's easy for me to get distracted by something, and I'm always fantastic, but it's maybe not heading us towards the learning outcome I should be going for that particular unit. So it's a good point. Is
just to draw yourself back, because and it's finding out, what are the needs to know versus what are the nice to knows.
Oh, that's right. Mind you, you can't teach them too much. They're sponges. We all are. But it is important to concentrate on the stuff that really is going to be in. Is this going to be in the assessment? Yeah,
absolutely. What's going to get them through?
Certainly concentrate on that. But yeah.
And it's just, and that's the things that with these discussions it does. It just sort of takes us back. All right, that's those wee prompts, those wee ideas. Keep those in.
It's all good.
Yeah. Wei, anything you'd like to finish off with? My goodness, all the lights have gone out of my office here. Bizarre.
Oh.
That must be it.
Must be.
The place shuts down at 6. We shifted office on Monday, so we've come into a whole new building now, so it's quite bizarre. It's emptied out. There's not a person around. I'll just see what Wei's typing. And you can go home now, Steve?
Oh, actually, I'm at home.
Oh, good on you.
Yeah.
Okay. It's taking a little bit to come through.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to have to type it all. That'd be hard.
I'm a panic typer in those situations at all.
Yeah.
Just doesn't even look like English.
Where's that blinking Y key gone?
You are doing so well, Wei. I'm really impressed. Be panicking under the pressure. It's important to revisit learning objectives and assessments. Good review today. My pleasure. My absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for your time and your input. And Wei especially, that was just massive. You did an amazing job keeping up with that conversation. No worries. So you both have a good evening, and I will put this up on YouTube as well, and that you can go through it again if you need, and keep playing with the principles of good assessments, the terminology. So thanks very much, guys, and we will see you next week. We'll talk to you next week.
Perfect.
Where we'll
Thanks
sort of
very much, Trish.
start looking at assessments a little bit more deeply, and what do the students need to know.
Sounds terrifying.
Thanks, guys. Have a lovely evening.
You too. Thanks very
All
much.
right. See ya.
See ya.
Bye, Way. Bye.